There's a reason truck drivers avoid certain exits at night. Not because they're dangerous, but because they feel familiar in a way they shouldn't. Like you've been there before even when you know you haven't. I didn't know that when I saw exit 9. It was 2:11 a.m., and I had been driving for nearly 5 hours straight. The highway was quiet, but not empty, just light enough with traffic to feel safe. My GPS said I had another 40 minutes to go, and all I wanted was a coffee and a bathroom break. That's when the sign appeared. Exit 9, rest area, 1 mile. I frowned. My GPS didn't mention a rest area anywhere nearby, but I shrugged it off. Roads change. Maps don't always keep up. A mile later, the sign appeared again. Exit 9, rest area, 1 mile. Same sign, same distance. My speed stayed constant. I hadn't turned around. Still, the exit refused to get closer. The traffic around me began to thin out, one car at a time peeling away into the darkness until I was alone again. The radio lowered itself slightly, not enough to notice at first, just enough to feel wrong. Then the GPS spoke. Prepare to exit. I looked at the screen. The route line flickered, then redrew itself, bending sharply toward exit 9. I didn't touch you, I muttered. The exit ramp came into view, curving away from the highway. It looked normal, clean, lit by a single row of dim yellow lights. At the base of the ramp stood a small sign, one I almost missed. Rest area closed. I slowed instinctively. That's when the car behind me honked. I checked the mirror. There was no one there. The honk came again, closer this time, like it was coming from inside my head rather than behind the car. My foot hovered over the brake. The GPS spoke softly, almost gently. This is your last exit. A chill crawled up my arms. I don't need to stop, I said, out loud, trying to sound calm. The GPS paused, then replied, everyone says that. The highway ahead suddenly felt longer, darker, like it was stretching away from me. The exit ramp, on the other hand, felt closer than it should have been, pulling at my attention. I glanced back at the road. For just a second, I saw taillights ahead. Then they vanished. The radio clicked to static, and the exit sign lit up brighter than the rest of the road, its reflective paint glowing in my headlights like it was waiting. I took my foot off the accelerator. The car began to drift toward exit 9 on its own. The car rolled onto the exit ramp before I fully realized I had stopped fighting it. The steering wheel felt heavier in my hands, like the road itself was guiding the turn. As soon as I left the highway, the noise of traffic vanished, replaced by a deep, unnatural quiet. The ramp ended in a small rest area. Only 3 parking spaces, 1 flickering streetlight, a low concrete building with dark windows. It looked old, like it had been built decades ago and forgotten. The kind of place no one bothered to maintain because no one was supposed to be there anymore. My GPS went black. Not frozen. Off. I parked anyway, the engine idling softly, and sat there for a moment, listening. There were no insects, no whine through the trees, no distant engines. Just the faint hum of the streetlight overhead. I stepped out of the car. The air smelled stale, like dust and cold metal. The ground felt slightly warm beneath my shoes, as if it had been absorbing heat all night without ever cooling down. I looked back toward the ramp. The highway was gone, not hidden by trees or a curve. Gone completely. In its place was a wall of darkness that didn't reflect light at all. My headlights pointed toward it, but the beam seemed to stop short, like it was afraid to go any farther. My chest tightened. This isn't real, I said quietly. The building door creaked open on its own. Inside, the restrooms were lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. The mirrors above the sinks were cracked, each one fractured in a slightly different way. I noticed something strange immediately. None of the mirrors showed the door behind me. They only showed the sinks. I leaned closer to one mirror and froze. My reflection was there, but it was delayed just slightly. When I raised my hand, the reflection followed a second later, as if it needed time to remember what I looked like. A voice spoke from somewhere behind the wall. You made it. It wasn't threatening. It sounded relieved. Who's here? I asked. No answer. just the sound of water turning on by itself at the far sink. Rust-colored liquid poured from the tap, splashing into the basin. I backed away slowly. That's when I noticed the writing carved into the wall near the exit door. Rest while you can. The road takes back what it gives. My phone vibrated in my pocket. No signal bars. No notifications. Just one message on the screen. Stay? The lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness for a split second. When they came back on, the mirrors were different. They were full of people. Men and women standing behind me, silent, watching. Their faces looked tired, familiar, like people I might have passed on the highway without noticing. I turned around. The room was empty, but the reflections didn't move. They just kept staring, waiting. And somewhere outside, beyond the darkness where the highway used to be, an engine started. Not mine. The engine sound outside kept running, slow and uneven, like a car that had been idling for a very long time. I stood frozen in the restroom, staring at the mirrors that still showed faces I couldn't see behind me. I forced myself to move. Step by step, I backed toward the door. The reflections followed, staying perfectly aligned with me, their eyes fixed, unblinking. Just before I reached the exit, one of them raised a hand and pressed it against the glass. I felt the pressure on my own palm. That's when the memory hit me. Not a clear memory, but a feeling. The same tiredness. The same relief I had felt when I first saw the exit sign. Every face in those mirrors had felt it too. They weren't trapped by force. They had stopped because they wanted to. I stepped outside. The parking lot looked different now. More cars were there, lined up neatly in the spaces, all turned off, all empty. Sedans, trucks, even an old van with a child's sticker peeling off the back window. All of them clean, all of them full of fuel. I walked toward the engine sound. At the far edge of the lot sat a car with its headlights on. Inside, a man rested his forehead against the steering wheel. He looked exhausted, like he had been driving for days. I knocked lightly on his window. He looked up, startled. Relief spread across his face when he saw me. "Is this place open?" he asked. I just needed a minute. My throat went dry. "Don't turn the engine off," I said. "Whatever you do, don't turn it off." He frowned. "Why?" Before I could answer, the streetlight above us flickered. The darkness beyond the lot shifted, creeping closer, like the night itself was leaning in to listen. The man glanced around. "Where's the highway?" he asked. I didn't have an answer for him. That's when the voice spoke again, the same calm, familiar tone from the GPS. "Rest areas are for stopping," it said. "Stopping is for staying." The man's engine sputtered once. Twice. I grabbed the door handle, trying to pull it open, but it wouldn't budge. The locks clicked down on their own. The man's eyes widened as he turned the key, panic creeping into his expression. The engine died. The moment it did, the parking lot went silent. The man slumped back in his seat, his expression empty, peaceful in a way that made my stomach twist. Slowly, he looked at me and smiled. "You should rest too," he said softly. Behind him, his reflection in the windshield didn't move. I stepped back as the streetlight went out. The other cars in the lot began to flicker, one by one, headlights turning on without engines, illuminating figures sitting inside, all facing forward, all waiting. The exit ramp behind me reappeared suddenly, clear and bright, like it had always been there. The GPS in my pocket buzzed. "Route available. Exit now." I didn't hesitate. I ran. I don't remember getting back into my car. I only remember the moment the engine roared to life and the road reappeared in front of me, wide, familiar, and full of motion. Traffic surrounded me again, headlights flowing past like nothing had happened. The radio played softly, and my GPS returned to normal, calmly recalculating my route. Exit 9 was gone. I drove for another hour before I finally pulled over, hands shaking, chest tight, trying to convince myself that it was over. By the time I reached home, the night felt distant, unreal, like a dream that fades as soon as the sun comes up. For a while, things were normal. Then the signs started showing up, not on highways, but in small places. A rest area marked closed that looked newly cleaned. A parking lot that felt too quiet, too still. Every time I passed one, a strange sense of relief washed over me, followed immediately by guilt, like I had forgotten something important. Weeks later, I searched for Exit 9. It wasn't on any map. Not digital, not printed, not archived. There were no reports, no photos, no mention of a rest area in that location. Just one discussion thread buried deep online, started by a long-deleted user. If you see the sign twice, don't take it. If your GPS tells you it's the last exit, it's already decided. The post ended with a single reply. Some of us only wanted to rest. I stopped driving at night after that. But last evening, while stuck in traffic on a familiar highway, my radio dropped into static for just a second. A calm voice slipped through, not urgent, not threatening, just certain. Exit ahead. I didn't look at the sign. I didn't slow down. I kept my eyes forward and drove past. In my mirror, for a brief moment, I thought I saw headlights pulling off behind me, turning down a ramp that shouldn't have been there. I didn't turn back to check, because the road doesn't chase everyone. It only remembers the ones who stop. People think highways are safe because they're wide, open, and familiar. But what they don't tell you is this: if something goes wrong out there at night, there is nowhere to hide. No doors to lock, no lights to run toward. Just miles of dark road and whatever decides to notice you. I learned that the hard way. It was a little after 1:30 a.m. when I crossed mile marker 117. I remember the number clearly, not because it meant anything at the time, but because I would see it again, and again, and again. I was driving alone, heading back after a long shift, trying to stay awake with the radio playing low in the background. The highway was unusually empty, but I didn't think much of it. Late nights are like that sometimes. Then the radio cut out. No warning, no static fade. 1 second it was playing, the next it was dead. The screen stayed lit, but there was no sound at all. I tapped it once, then twice, before giving up. That was when I noticed the silence outside. No passing cars, no distant engines, not even the usual wind noise. Just my tires rolling over asphalt. I checked my phone. No signal. A strange uneasiness settled into my chest, the kind you can't explain but can't ignore either. I slowed down slightly and focused on the road ahead. That's when my headlights caught something on the shoulder. A car, parked at an angle, hazard lights blinking slowly, patiently, like it had been waiting. Both front doors were open, swaying just a little, even though there was no wind. I felt relief at first. Another driver meant I wasn't alone. Then I felt confusion. There was no one around. As I passed, I glanced inside. The seats were empty. No bags, no phone, no sign of a struggle. The hazards kept blinking as I drove by, steady and calm. In my rearview mirror, the lights suddenly went dark. I frowned and looked back again. The car was gone, not farther down the road, not pulled onto another lane. Gone, like it had never been there. My heart started beating faster. I told myself it was just fatigue, my eyes playing tricks on me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel and kept driving. Less than a minute later, I saw the sign. Mile marker 117. I stared at it as I passed, a cold feeling creeping up my spine. That wasn't possible. I hadn't turned around, and I hadn't stopped. The road ahead looked exactly the same as before, long, empty, and swallowed by darkness. Then something stepped into my headlights. I slammed the brakes, the car screeching as it stopped just short of hitting him. A man stood in the middle of the road, motionless, his head slightly tilted like he was studying me. He looked tired, soaked, and far too calm for someone who almost got run over. I rolled my window down halfway. "Are you okay?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted past me, toward the darkness behind my car. "You shouldn't slow down here," he finally said. His voice was quiet, flat, almost warning. This part of the highway remembers people. A chill ran through me. Remembers them how? The man took a step back, his expression tightening. "Like you remember a bad dream," he said. Not clearly, but enough to know it was real. Before I could say another word, my headlights flickered, and when they steadied again, the man was gone. The road was empty, and behind me, something in the back seat let out a slow, steady breath. I didn't turn around right away. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to look into the back seat, but fear held my neck stiff. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, even though the headlights were pointed at nothing but empty asphalt. The breath came again, slow, controlled, too close. I forced myself to check the rearview mirror. The back seat looked empty. No movement, no shadow, no reflection that didn't belong there. Still, the air felt disturbed, like someone was sitting just out of sight. I swallowed and pressed the accelerator. The car moved forward, but the engine sounded strained, like it was carrying extra weight. My speed climbed, yet the road ahead didn't seem to change. The darkness stayed the same, thick and endless. Then I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The speedometer was moving, but the odometer wasn't. The miles weren't changing. I passed another sign. Mile marker 117. My chest tightened. I was trapped in a loop, driving forward without actually going anywhere. The highway wasn't letting me leave. A quiet voice broke the silence. "You slowed down." The words came from inside the car. I nearly swerved off the road. My hands shook as I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice barely steady. No answer at first. Then the voice spoke again, calm and close. "You were warned. The road doesn't like being noticed." I glanced at the passenger seat. Empty. The back seat. Still empty. Yet the voice felt like it was everywhere, filling the car, vibrating through the metal and glass. "What do you want?" I asked. There was a pause, as if whatever it was needed time to decide. "We keep what stops," the voice finally said. "We keep what looks back." Cold sweat ran down my neck. Images flashed through my mind. The empty car on the shoulder, the man who vanished, the repeating mile marker. None of them were separate. They were all part of the same thing. The highway wasn't haunted. It was hungry. The air inside the car grew heavier. My headlights dimmed slightly, their beam narrowing, struggling to push through the dark ahead. I felt pressure against my ears, like I was descending underwater. Then I heard it. A soft tapping. Not on the window. From the roof. Tap, tap, tap. The same slow rhythm as the knocking earlier. I remembered the man's words. "You shouldn't slow down here." I pressed the accelerator harder. The car surged forward, the engine whining in protest. The tapping turned into dragging, something scraping slowly across the roof, following the length of the car. A shape slid down into view, just at the edge of my windshield. I didn't see its face. I didn't want to. I only saw long fingers curling over the glass, leaving dark streaks behind. "Don't stop," the voice whispered. "If you stop, you stay." My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I pushed the car faster than I ever had before, ignoring the shaking, the smell of burning rubber, the warning lights flashing on the dashboard. The road ahead finally began to change. In the distance, I saw lights. Real lights. Headlights. Street lamps. Movement. Hope surged through me. The pressure lifted suddenly. The scraping stopped. The weight in the car vanished all at once, like something had been thrown off at high speed. I burst through the edge of the darkness and into traffic, surrounded by other cars, noise, and life. The radio turned back on. Music played like nothing had happened. I didn't stop driving until sunrise. Later that morning, I searched for mile marker 117. It didn't exist. No record. No reports. No accidents. Just one thing. A local news article buried deep online. Unidentified vehicles found abandoned along highway. No occupants located. And every photo showed the same detail. Both doors open. Hazard lights blinking. I didn't sleep after that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt that pressure again. The weight in the car. The sense that something was sitting just behind me, breathing quietly and waiting for me to slow down. By morning, logic started creeping back in. Daylight has a way of doing that. I convinced myself it had been exhaustion, stress, maybe a brief hallucination caused by long hours on the road. So I did what anyone trying to feel normal would do. I went back. Not at night. Not alone. 3 days later, just before sunset, I drove the same highway with a full tank, my phone charged, and traffic all around me. Everything looked ordinary. The road was busy, loud, and alive. When I reached the area where it had happened, my stomach tightened. The sign stood there calmly on the shoulder. Mile marker 118. I slowed down, scanning both sides of the road. Nothing felt wrong. No silence. No heaviness. Just cars passing and horns in the distance. I almost laughed. Then I noticed something small. The space where mile marker 117 should have been was empty. No broken post. No sign of removal. Just bare ground, darker than the rest, like something had been dug out and covered again. I told myself to let it go, but the unease followed me for the rest of the drive. That night, curiosity got the better of me. I searched deeper online, scrolling past forums and archived news pages until I found something older, something most people would never see. A scanned police report from almost 15 years ago. Multiple disappearances reported along a 6-mile stretch of highway. No signs of struggle. Vehicles recovered with doors open and engines cold. Witnesses reported hearing voices, knocking sounds, and seeing the same mile marker repeatedly. One line stood out. Survivors describe a sensation of being watched by the road itself. There were only 3 survivors. 3. All of them had one thing in common. They never fully stopped. The report mentioned the others too. The ones who didn't make it. Drivers who pulled over to help. Drivers who got out of their cars. Drivers who turned around to look. Their vehicles were found days later, sometimes weeks, always empty. But investigators noted something strange. The driver's seat was always adjusted correctly. The mirrors were set just right. And the fuel tanks were always nearly full, as if they had never tried to leave. That's when I understood the truth. The highway doesn't kill you. It keeps you. The man I saw that night wasn't a warning. He was a reminder. Someone who had slowed down once, just long enough to be noticed. Now he stood there, night after night, part of the road, helping it decide who stayed and who passed through. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Last night, while driving home on a completely different road, my radio crackled softly. I hadn't touched it. A calm voice slipped through the static. Approaching mile marker 117. I checked my mirrors. The back seat was empty, but the air felt heavy again. And somewhere behind me, something smiled, knowing I remembered the way back. I stopped trying to fight it after that night. Once you hear the road speak your name, you understand something important. It isn't chasing you. It's waiting. Highways have patience. They stretch for miles and years, and they know that sooner or later, people always come back. For weeks, nothing happened. I avoided long drives, kept my routes short, stayed where the streets had names instead of numbers. Slowly, the fear dulled, turning into something quieter, something heavier. Memory. Then one evening, while sitting in traffic, I noticed my hands resting on the steering wheel without thinking. The grip felt familiar, natural, like I had done it thousands of times before. My eyes traced the road ahead, searching for signs I wasn't even aware I remembered. That's when I realized the truth. The highway had let me go, but it hadn't forgotten me. I started noticing small things. I would hear faint knocking sounds in quiet parking lots. My radio would sometimes switch to static for just a second, long enough for a voice to whisper directions I didn't ask for. Every so often, I would dream of endless asphalt and repeating numbers, always stopping just before I reached the sign. 117. I never dreamed of leaving the road. I only dreamed of driving. Months passed. Life moved on. Fear turned into curiosity, and curiosity slowly became something worse. Familiarity, the kind that makes danger feel normal. One night, much later, I took a different highway home. It wasn't planned. I missed an exit and decided not to turn around. The road was empty, smooth, and quiet, the way highways often are when they feel most honest. The radio crackled, not loudly, not urgently, softly, like a memory surfacing. You know this way. I didn't slow down. I didn't speed up either. Ahead of me, a green sign came into view, its reflective paint catching my headlights. I already knew what it would say before I could read it, and the worst part was how calm that made me feel. Mile marker 117. The number didn't scare me anymore. It felt familiar, comforting. I kept driving, my hands steady, my breathing even. The road stretched open in front of me, wide and welcoming, like it had been waiting all along. Somewhere behind me, in the place I no longer checked, the air shifted gently, settling in. The radio hummed softly, and the highway remembered me the same way I remembered it. Not clearly, not completely, but enough to know that once you've been here, a part of you never really leaves. Because roads don't forget people. They just wait for them to come back.